Elias, I'm sorry I got held up at the gallery. She took off her camel wool coat, revealing a burgundy velvet dress underneath. The pearl brooch pinned at her collar was an antique I'd bought at Sotheby's last year, said to have once belonged to a lady-in-waiting of Empress Sissi. I reached out to brush the snowflakes from her shoulders, but when my fingers touched her cold fingertips, she flinched away instinctively. It's all right, I pulled out a chair for her. I ordered your favorite baked apple pie, with cinnamon. Whenever she smiled, a faint dimple would form on her right cheek, exactly like my mother's when she was young. 3 years ago, at the Art History Symposium reception, she'd been wearing a white blouse, frowning in front of a reproduction of Rembrandt's work and saying, "The light and shadow shouldn't be this stiff." In that instant, I'd felt a sudden jolt. Back then, I'd just inherited the old mansion from my grandfather, which housed dozens of unauthenticated classical paintings. As the youngest art history professor at the University of Vienna, I'd thought I could see through the truth and falsehood beneath every layer of paint, but I'd failed to see the truth in the woman before me. "You've been tied up with the gallery lately?" I cut a piece of pie and pushed it toward her. "How's the preparation going for that Impressionist special exhibition you mentioned last time?" Lena's fork paused for a moment, her eyelashes fell, masking the look in her eyes. "It's going okay, but funding's a bit tight. You know how fierce the competition is among galleries in Vienna." She looked up at me, her gaze soft in a way I could never refuse. "Elias, does your grandfather's collection include Monet's sketch of *water lilies*? If I could borrow it for the exhibition, my special show would definitely be a success." This was the 3rd time she'd mentioned that sketch. My grandfather had been a passionate collector, but before his death, he'd donated most of his collection to the art museum, leaving only a few crates of personal mementos in the attic of the old mansion. I hadn't even had time to sort through them carefully, yet Lena knew every item inside better than I did. "We'll talk about it after I finish sorting the attic this weekend," I ruffled her hair. "Don't rush, your talent doesn't need a sketch to prove itself." She threw herself into my arms, and her perfume, mixed with the cold scent of snow, filled my nostrils. It was Moonlight, the custom fragrance I had made for her, with bergamot top notes and sandalwood base notes. It felt just like her, warm yet distant. "You're so kind, Elias," her voice muffled against my chest. "I'm afraid I don't deserve you." Back then, I'd only taken it for modesty. I kissed her forehead with a smile. "Silly girl, if anyone's unworthy, it's me." Dust lay thick in the old mansion that weekend. Sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows, casting dappled light on the floor. Lena had arrived half an hour before me, and when I heard footsteps, she was rummaging through a wooden crate in the attic. She spun around in a hurry, a yellowed diary clutched in her hand. "I just wanted to help you find the sketch faster," her face pale. "I didn't expect to find your grandfather's diary." I took the diary. The gilded pattern on the cover had faded. My grandfather's handwriting was bold and forceful, recording his collecting experiences in Paris when he was young. When I flipped to the last few pages, a passage made my eyes sting sharply. "Vienna, 1947. Chanced upon an orphan of the Kovacs family. Traded 3 Rembrandt sketches for the authentic Monet in his possession. My greatest regret in life is not extending a hand to him in his loneliness, not the gain or loss of the collection." Kovacs, Lena's family name. I looked up at her abruptly, and her lips trembled as tears rolled down her cheeks. "Elias, that *water lilies* sketch is actually a copy of the authentic work. My grandfather relied on it to keep the real painting safe back then. I've been searching for it for 20 years. I never thought it would be with you." A sinking feeling hit my chest, but I still reached out to hug her. "It's okay. If you need it, I'll give it back to you." But she pushed me away, her eyes filled with agony. "No, you don't understand. I approached you for that painting from the start. Before he died, my father said the honor of the Kovacs family rested entirely on that authentic work. I spent half a year researching you, learning you were an art history professor, learning about your grandfather's collection, and then I deliberately approached you at that symposium. It felt like an icicle had been driven straight into my heart. I froze, every breath a sharp pain. Those sweet memories suddenly shattered into jagged shards. She'd remembered I hated onions because I'd mentioned it in an academic paper. She'd loved walking along the Danube because my grandfather's diary had said it was his favorite spot. The pearl brooch on her chest was actually the Kovacs family crest. What about your feelings for me? My voice was as hoarse as sandpaper. Were those late-night hugs, those sweet words I heard, all just lies? Lena covered her face, her shoulders shaking violently. I don't know. Elias, I was happy with you. Sometimes I even forgot why I was there. But I can't betray my family, I have to fulfill my father's last wish. I turned and walked into the study, taking a wooden box from the safe. Inside, Monet's sketch lay quietly. The blue paint had faded slightly, but the light and shadow so characteristic of Monet still shone through. I held the box out to her. Take it. Pretend we never met. She took the box, and her tears fell onto the wood, darkening small spots. I'm sorry, Elias. She turned and ran downstairs, her camel coat vanishing around the stairwell like a dream that had never been. For the next month, I locked myself in my office at the university. I taught my classes during the day and drowned myself in bars at night. Vienna's bars were always filled with the melody of waltzes, but I could never again bring myself to listen to Lena's favorite asterisk, the Blue Danube Star. Once, outside a bar, I saw her standing with a stranger. He wore an expensive suit and held a document, and Lena wore a cold, distant smile I'd never seen before. I rushed over and grabbed her wrist. She turned in surprise, and her face paled instantly when she saw me. Who is he? Jealousy and anger burned in my voice. He's the museum director. We're discussing the exhibition of the authentic asterisk water lilies star. She tried to pull her hand away. Elias, we're over. Over? I scoffed. So you can use me, get what you want, and then walk away scot-free? Lena, did you ever stop to think that I'm human too? That I can hurt? The man stepped forward, placing himself between us. Sir, please show some respect. Ms. Lena is now the heir to the Kovacs family and the owner of the authentic asterisk water lilies star. Your pestering is damaging her reputation. I looked at Lena, but she stared at the ground, avoiding my eyes. In that moment, all my pride and love shattered into dust. I let go of her hand and stumbled backward. Fine. I'll stop bothering you. I wish you every success. Back in my empty apartment, I gathered every item that reminded me of Lena, the scarf she'd knitted, the sketches she'd drawn, the perfume she'd left behind. I piled them in the center of the living room and struck a match. Flames rose, lighting up my face. Those sweet memories blurred in the firelight, leaving nothing but a piercing, icy pain. 2 weeks later, Lena's Impressionist special exhibition opened at the Vienna Art Museum. I wore a mask and blended into the crowd, watching her from a distance. She wore a white gown, standing before the authentic asterisk water lilies asterisk as she accepted everyone's applause and praise like a blooming white rose. But when her gaze swept across the crowd and met mine, her eyes filled with shock and anguish, and her fingers tightened around the hem of her dress instinctively. After the exhibition, I waited for her at the museum's back entrance. When she saw me, she stopped, silent for a long time. What are you doing here? I came to tell you something. I pulled a yellowed letter from my pocket. This is an addendum to my grandfather's will. He said that after trading for the authentic work from Mr. Kovacs, he'd always felt guilty. So before he died, he transferred ownership of the authentic painting back to the Kovacs family. He just couldn't find any of your relatives back then. I only found this yesterday. Lena took the letter, her hands trembling as tears fell again. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I wanted to know if you'd known the truth earlier, would you still have approached me? I looked into her eyes. Lena, I don't blame you for coming close to me. I only blame you for never trusting me, for never trusting our feelings. She threw herself into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I was wrong, Elias, I was so wrong. I thought you'd be like your grandfather, refusing to return the painting. I thought the only way to get it back was to use you. But when I got that sketch, I realized the last thing I wanted was the painting, it was you. I held her, feeling her trembling. The wound in my heart seemed to ache a little less. But just then, my phone rang. It was a colleague from the university. Elias, it's a disaster. Your old paper on Rembrandt has been reported for plagiarism. The university's investigating now. I pushed Lena away abruptly, catching the panic in her eyes. Did you do this? My voice turned cold. To make sure you'd get the painting, to prevent me from changing my mind, you reported me, hoping to ruin my reputation. It wasn't me, Lena hurried to explain. It was my uncle. He's always opposed me being with you. He said you'd stand in the way of getting the painting back. He did this. I only found out just now. I looked at her, suddenly exhausted. Deceit and suspicion had woven an invisible net around us, and even the truth couldn't set us free. Lena, I took a deep breath. Between us, there's more than just a painting. There's your family, my pride, and all those days I spent being deceived. Maybe we were never meant to be. She grabbed my hand, refusing to let go. No, Elias, we can start over. I've cut ties with my uncle. I can help prove your innocence. We can go back to how we were. We can't go back, I gently pried her fingers from mine. Vienna's moonlight is too cold for people like us. I turned and walked away, not looking back. Lena's sobs echoed behind me, like a blunt knife cutting into my heart again and again. I knew I still loved her, but the pain of betrayal, the regret of realizing the truth too late, had become an uncrossable chasm between us. When Elias's footsteps faded at the end of the alley, Lena finally leaned against the museum's cold stone wall and slowly sank to her knees. The pearl brooch pressed painfully against her chest. It was the Kovacs family crest, a shackle she'd known since childhood. Before he died, her father had clutched her hand and said, "The authentic painting is the root of the Kovacs family." Her uncle, meanwhile, had drilled into her ears every day, "Elias and his grandfather are both thieves." She'd once tried to find flaws in Elias's academic papers, only to see his devotion to art in those rigorous notes where he'd written, "May all treasures return to their rightful place." The first time she'd seen him at the symposium, he'd worn a cream sweater and pointed at the light and shadow in a Rembrandt reproduction, saying, "Art shouldn't lie." In that moment, her heart had skipped a beat. She'd deliberately arrived late, deliberately said, "An artist's time belongs to inspiration," all just to watch his gentle expression as he waited a little longer. She sprayed the moonlight perfume he'd given her every night, yet cursed herself for forgetting her hatred every time she smelled the sandalwood notes. The night she'd gotten Monet's sketch, she'd sat in the attic of the old mansion all night. On the back of the sketch were her grandfather's words, "May future generations never be trapped by collections." Suddenly, she couldn't tell if she wanted the authentic painting or the man who'd pushed a plate of baked apple pie toward her. Her uncle had shown up at her door, slamming down evidence of Elias's plagiarism, early unpublished drafts of his, maliciously altered and spliced together. "Either report him, or I'll destroy his career in Vienna's academic circles forever." Her uncle's threat had been like an icicle, shattering the last of her illusions. She hated him, hated that his grandfather had traded for the authentic painting all those years ago, dooming the Kovacs family to a life of wandering, hated his naivety for thinking a single return could erase 2 generations of pain, and most of all, she hated herself for falling in love with him during the 6 months she'd spent researching him, for pushing the man she loved away with her own hands. When Elias had asked, "Were those sweet words all lies?" how could she have dared to tell the truth? She'd been terrified that admitting it would mean betraying her father's last wish, bringing shame to the entire Kovacs family. The cold wind in the alley cut through her gown now. She pulled the letter from her bag, the addendum to Elias's grandfather's will that he'd given her. She'd already read it long before. In it, her grandfather had stated, "I have transferred ownership of the authentic painting to the Kovacs family." Her uncle had hidden the letter, just to force her to turn on Elias. Her hands shook as she clutched the paper. Love and hatred tore at her chest, like the waves of the Danube, one side warm moonlight, the other icy cold. She knew Elias would never trust her again, just as she knew she'd never forgive the version of herself that had been manipulated by her family, the one who'd hurt the man she loved. Later, I resigned from my position at the University of Vienna and moved to Venice. No cold mists of the Danube here, no warm lamplight of Café Golden Horn, no woman who had torn my heart between love and hate. I opened a small art bookstore near St. Mark's Square, spending my days surrounded by books and paint. One day, a tourist walked into the store holding an art magazine. Lena was on the cover, with the headline, Lena Kovacs, the artistic heir of the Kovacs family. The article stated that she donated the authentic water lilies to the Vienna Art Museum and established an art fund to support talented young artists. I put down the magazine and walked to the window. The sunlight in Venice was warm and bright, and the sea breeze brushed my cheeks. I remembered Lena once saying her greatest dream was to let more people feel the charm of art. Now, she'd done it. Perhaps this was our best ending, living well apart. Just as the waters of the Danube would eventually flow into the sea, those past loves and hatreds would slowly settle into the deepest corners of my heart, washed smooth by time. But on some late nights, when the melody of the blue Danube drifted to my ears, I still couldn't help but think of that woman with the faint dimple on her right cheek, of Vienna's cold moonlight, and of that love, deceived yet sincere. I knew I'd always remember her, and that painful yet profound time. Because it had been the truest heartbeat of my life.